And then you slipped into the television industry quite effortlessly. You did great ideas with ABC, Weekender for 26 years, like you mentioned at the start, Who Dares Wins, Gladiators, Australian version as a referee, Last Chance Learners, 2000 Olympics, 2002 Manchester Commonwealth Games. You've done the works completely. You've done the complete bouquet. How did you get into this television business?
That's a really good question, Chandresh. I really, look, in Australia, if you were a cricketer, and I was doing a lot of after dinner speaking and was getting a pretty good reputation about telling some good stories and stuff like that. And most people who retire in Australia, sportsmen, they wanted to work for Channel 9 at that time, because 9 had the cricket, 9 had the rugby league, 9 had the big sports here in New South Wales where I play. And the cricket, you know, there was Richie and Tony Greig and Bill Laurie and Ian Chappell, and you know, you wanted to get on with Channel 9 to do the cricket. Out of the blue, about 3 months after I retired, a bloke who I'd played first grade cricket against, he batted number 3 for the University of New South Wales with Michael Slater and Jeff Lawson and that mob. He was running Channel 7 in Sydney. He's a very smart cookie. Chris Chapman had a degree in economics and commerce and stuff like that, was running Channel 7 in Sydney. And he was a very good batsman. He was very unlucky not to play for New South Wales, a very elegant number 3, and scored a lot of runs in first grade in Sydney. He rang me up and said, "What are you doing media-wise?" And I went, "Oh, you know, I don't really want to go to Channel 9. Everybody goes to Channel 9. I want to do something different. Come out and see me." So I drove out to Epping, a suburb in Sydney where Channel 7 was, and he said, "We'd love you to do sport for us." And I went, "I don't want to do sport. Everybody retires from their sport and they go and do their sport. I just want to do something different." He said, "What do you want to do?" And in his office was a coat rack with a coat and a jumper, but it had a bowler hat on it. So I went, "This is what I want to do." I picked the bowler hat up and I went, da 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 da, and hung the bowler hat up. I said, "I want to do entertainment." He went, "Not too many sportsmen. I don't think any sportsmen have left their sport and gone into entertainment." He said, "But we have a show called Sydney Weekender, and we've only made 10 episodes in 1994. If you want to sign up here with us, you can start your hosting education on this Sydney Weekender." Very quickly, I was only there about 3 months, and Who Dares Wins arrived. And I'd actually worked on Great Ideas on the ABC, which was another story how I just did that little TV show. I'd worked with this English guy, Adrian Brandt, who was now working for a production company that was selling television to Channel 7, and they'd come up with this idea of Who Dares Wins. Nothing had ever been thought about like that. This was the start of reality TV, and it was actually going out on the street and daring people for money or a big prize to do something that was totally out of their comfort zone. Well, the show just went, because Sydney Weekender is only New South Wales based. Who Dares Wins was Australian based. So I found out very quickly that the people who weren't interested in cricket and really didn't know the cricketers or know anybody with a profile, all of a sudden I had this other audience from TV, and I was the dare man. So everywhere I went for many years, it was, "Are you going to dare me?" or "I dare ya," or "How's Tanya Zayeda?" who was my co-host on the show. And people still, you know, we finished making that show in 1998, I think, and people still ask me about Who Dares Wins now.
Interesting. And you also worked on the 2000 Olympics and the 2002 Commonwealth Games. You did a bit of reality show, the Gladiators and Last Chance Learners. How that phase? Can you tell us about that?
Gladiators was amazing. That was a franchise that was moving around the world, and Channel 7 bought that franchise. And at the same time I was doing Who Dares Wins, an ex-Australian tennis player called John Alexander was the original referee, but Wimbledon was on, and 7 also was broadcasting Wimbledon. So John had to go, and the ratings for Gladiators were great, so they wanted to go into a second season. So the heavies at Channel 7 rang me and said, "We need you to be this referee on the second season of Gladiators, and we'll strike a new contract and add this to your existing contract with Weekender." And I'm going, "Yeah," and there's dollar figures we're ticking over, and I'm going, "Happy days, look at this." And then all of a sudden Gladiators was on, and that was enormous as well, Chandresh. I mean, that first year or two of Gladiators was just amazing. So I had Who Dares Wins going on here. I had Gladiators going on here. I had Sydney Weekender going on here. And my then wife had just given birth to our triplets, who are now 26. So my life went from pretty cricket chaos to media chaos and family chaos within a very short time. And it was like that for a number of years. Last Chance Learners came a little bit after that. The funny thing about Who Dares Wins was about 10 or 12 years ago, maybe a bit more now, we actually went to India and made some Who Dares Wins for AXN and went over there 2 years in a row. And it was very, very big in India. And a lot of Indian people pull me up on the street, even in Sydney now, and go, oh, I was living in India and I've moved out here, but I remember AXN and Who Dares Wins AXN. So that show was pretty crazy. You mentioned the Olympic Games. Wow. You know, I as a kid, I was a pretty good athlete. I was a sprinter and a long jumper and a triple jumper. And of course, when you're a kid, you want to play rugby league for Australia and cricket for Australia or go to the Olympics. And when my sporting career funneled into cricket, well, of course, no Olympics, cricket's not playing in the Olympics, but I'd always wanted to go to see the spectacle, to have it in my hometown and to be working for Channel 7, who were the broadcaster for Australia. They were the feature broadcaster for the world. It went through Channel 7 and then got beamed out the world. And that's something I will never, ever forget. And I remember the day before the opening ceremony, we were all in the newsroom because I was working for news and doing news stories at the time and stuff like that. And they hand me my pass, which you got to have around your neck for the whole 3 weeks. And I look at this pass, Chandresh, and it says, access all areas. So I go up to the boss and I go, what's that mean? Access all areas. He goes, yeah, you can go anywhere, any place at any Olympic event. So I thought, wow. So I did some sports that I knew nothing about and had to study. I did the cycling. I did the rowing. I went and did the tennis. I did some gymnastics. And I kept saying to the boss, I don't know anything about this sport. Well, I respect it, but I don't read up, study, and turn up tomorrow. So all of a sudden I had this new education about these sports that I'd seen, but you don't know the nuances and the training and the cycling was fascinating, man. And the power of some of those people. And this was in the velodrome and I'm right there. Like I'm in Seven's spot with the cameras and we're right there. You were right there for everything. Of course, again, the opening and closing ceremonies were just masterpieces in extravaganza as they are. And you're trying to showcase your own country as you do. And, I thought we did a fantastic job and it left an amazing imprint on Sydney, which I still see now 20 years down the track and will always be there. The facilities that we were left and I still see people wearing their volunteer shirts around 20 years down the track. Of course, 2 years later, Seven's had the rights for the Commonwealth Games in Manchester. So I got to go back there where I made my test debut in 1981 and sort of relive all that Manchester thing again as well. And that was a wonderful experience because it gave me an opportunity when I was in Manchester to go and see my friends in Fleetwood, to go to Haslingden, where I played cricket as well in the Lancashire League, Littleborough, I'd played in the Central Lancs League. So I got to see all my friends again and be involved in another absolute spectacular sporting extravaganza. So I'm very, very grateful, Chandresh, of being able to do all those things and be a part of that sort of history.
And you've also been involved in rugby league, if I'm not mistaken, as an administrator. What is that all about?
Where I grew up in that suburb of Matraville, and my dad was born not too far away near the airport in Mascot and East Lakes. That's South Sydney Rabbitohs territory, mate, in Sydney. You just don't, where I grew up, you didn't support anybody else. And if you did, you got a cork thigh. You got, you know, you might have got a chopper. So everybody supported the South Sydney Rabbitohs, and my father, who actually passed away when I was 16, but I think when my sister and I were born, we were just South Sydney Rabbitohs. You got a red and green eye. So I'd always supported them, and at the back end of the 90s, the club was in a bit of financial trouble. We hadn't had a good time over many years, although we were the greatest club and we'd won the most competitions. Financially, we were sliding, and a couple of very big personalities who also supported the club got a group together called Group 14 to try and help save the club. So I jumped on board that with some really amazing people, some very heavy hitters, politicians and all that sort of stuff. And before I knew it, they asked me, would I represent Group 14 on the board of the South Sydney Rabbitohs, the football club? And I thought, wow, if my father was alive and knew that I'd just been asked this, in fact, any of his family, any of my family, man, this is a really big deal. So I accepted that. And in the first year that I was on the board, the South Sydney Rabbitohs got kicked out of the competition. So then we were in nearly 3 years of courts, 3 levels of court. We finally got to the High Court. That was, look, a really amazing education about sitting around a boardroom table, the juggling that goes on, the conspiracy behind why South got kicked out, why they didn't get kicked out, the political moves behind it, who were connected to the club that I just had no idea. And finally, we won the last court case and we were reinstated back into the competition, I think 2001. And not long after that, Russell Crowe and Peter Holmes at Court, a very big businessman in Australia, decided that Russell, they were both, Russell in particular, a tragic Rabbitohs man, decided that he wanted to purchase the club and really try and take it forward. Of course, that's got to go through an AGM and get 75% support. But the members of the club supported that, and Russell has owned the club with Peter Holmes at Court, who sold his share to James Packer, actually, not that long ago. So when you've got some heavy hitters like that at the top of the pyramid, it's a little bit easier because, you know, they're there for support. If one of the players needs something, you can go to these guys and ask. So, look, a year after we got back into the competition, that was pretty much enough for me. It was pretty high-powered, tiring, a lot of information, reams of notes, going to 3 court cases. It was very, very tough. So I stood down from the board of South Sydney and instantly was asked to be the president of a new cricket club in Sydney, which was my old club, Randwick. And we merged with Petersham Marrickville, another very old club, to create Randwick Petersham. So I took on the role as president, and I've been the president there for the last 19 years. And I do that with great respect, because if it wasn't for the Randwick Cricket Club, where I first went to play club cricket, and some of the gentlemen there that encouraged me, taught me, took me when I didn't have a car to play games, because I said my dad had passed away when I was 16 and Mum did everything she could, but there were times where she just couldn't take me 50 kilometres out the other side of Sydney to play. So very grateful, and I figured that I owed that club a lot for my life, and that's why I've been the president for 19 years. Here's my message to all my friends in India. Please stay safe. Please think about each other. If that means you have to social distance, please do that. We'll all get through this, but you have to think about your neighbours and particularly the old people that it really affects. So to all my friends, you're all winners. I love you very much, and namaste. Good day, Mike Whitney here from Who Dares Wins. I'm daring all of you, please, to look after each other, stay indoors, a little bit of social distancing, particularly for the old people. Make sure you look after them, and you'll all be winners.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Mike. I think with that, we have forgiven you for what happened in January 1992. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you and going down memory lane. I've never had a laugh this much with anybody. Thanks a lot for doing this with me.
My pleasure, Chandresh. Namaste, my friend.
Namaste. Thanks a lot.
Good on you, mate. Anytime. My pleasure, mate.